Before money, there was only trust. Villages traded grain for cattle, salt for cloth. Each exchange was a handshake with memory. Memory breaks, promises fray. When transactions multiplied, chaos crept in. Who owed what? Who had paid? Markets demanded a record, not of words, but of proof. The first accountants were scribes. Clay tablets kept lists of debt and duty. A mark on clay became a ledger of lives. That ledger bent the future. It allowed strangers to trust strangers, and the idea of measurable value was born. This was the quiet start of money. Tokens appeared next, small, simple stones. One stone meant one measure of grain. They were proof you had fulfilled an obligation. Tokens could travel where grain could not. They fit in pockets and in pouches. Merchants began to carry certainty, not sacks. Accounting left clay and crossed into the street. Tokens standardized trade across villages, but tokens were awkward to verify. Someone always asked, "What if this token is not true?" Authority stepped in to guarantee. Leaders stamped tokens with signs of trust. The stamp became the promise. That mark turned token into money. Society learned to trust a symbol. Metal changed everything. Metal kept value better than wood or stone. Kings and temples melted metals into discs. They stamped them with seals, proof of weight and worth. A coin's image said, "This is real." Coins traveled along trade routes like ambassadors. They spoke a universal language of value. Empires used coins to pay soldiers, build roads, buy loyalty. Money became a tool of power. But coins also told stories of rulers, victories, gods. The image on a coin shaped the myth of a nation. With metal in hand, commerce soared. Cities traded across oceans with nothing but mint marks. And the world learned a new truth. Money organizes empires. Coins were the first global language. Metal was heavy. Humans wanted more flexible trust. Merchants returned to ledgers, but now with names and promises. IOUs became common in bustling ports. One merchant could accept another's promise in payment. Credit was born, invisible but powerful. Credit built empires faster than gold ever could. It allowed trade before payment had changed hands. Banks emerged as guardians of these promises. Temples and wealthy families stored wealth and recorded debt. They issued letters that said, "We owe you this." Those letters became liquid as coins. Society relaxed. Trade expanded beyond borders. But credit also amplified risk. One default could ripple like lightning. Money had become faith organized by institutions. Banks began as safe houses for wealth. People deposited valuables and received notes. These notes promised to pay the bearer the metal inside. They were convenient, light, and widely accepted. Merchants preferred notes over heavy coin shipments. Banks lent out a portion of deposits to grow commerce. This fractional dance multiplied money in circulation. With lending came interest and profit. A new power structure emerged: creditors and borrowers. Bankers learned to balance trust and greed. Yet every expansion risked collapse. A panic could empty vaults overnight. So rulers and bankers struck bargains. Laws, privileges, and bailouts knitted the system. Modern finance took root in those quiet vaults. Paper replaced metal in many places. It began as a receipt for treasure in a vault. But paper was lighter, easier, and easier to multiply. Governments realized they could issue paper backed by promise. Paper money could fund armies and build canals without immediate tax. It turned future wealth into present power, but promises can be stretched. When rulers printed too much, value slipped away. Currency devaluation became a political weapon. Empires inflated their way through crises. Hyperinflation left ruined pockets and broken trusts. And yet paper endured because it was flexible. Paper turned national will into daily exchange. Money had become a statement from a state. The signature on a note was a social contract. Nations sought certainty in the roar of paper. The gold standard promised a fixed worth. Each note pledged convertibility to a fixed weight of gold. That promise tamed inflation for a while. Global trade expanded under gold's shadow, but gold is scarce, and scarcity constrains policy. During wars and depressions, nations broke the chain. Governments discovered they needed flexibility more than purity. The gold standard became a cage for economies. Breaking it felt like betrayal to some, salvation to others. The world learned stability has its price, and that price shapes who prospers and who suffers. Money's rules were never neutral. They were choices that favored some powers over others. Currency policy had become geopolitics. Money also crossed borders with armies. Colonies were laboratories for currency control. Imperial powers imposed coins, taxes, and trade rules. Local economies were reshaped to feed distant capitals. Silver flowed from mines to global markets. The wealth extracted from colonies funded cities and wars. Money became an instrument of extraction. Paper promises underwritten by colonial authority shaped reality. Local currencies were marginalized or replaced. That economic rewriting lasted generations. Former colonies paid interest on debts they never fully consented to. The ledger of empire recorded winners and permanent losers. Money mapped power on a global scale, and the echoes of those maps remain today. Empires used cash to redraw the world. Humans repeat patterns no algorithm can fully erase. Markets lift fads into frenzies. Tulips, railways, dot-coms, crypto, stories change, the rhythm stays. Bubbles begin with hope and end with panic. Greed surges on the back of believable lies. When reality returns, ruin follows glamour. Yet each crash seeds the next innovation. Regulators and bankers chase lessons they rarely learn. Speculation is a mirror of human desire. Money magnifies what people already want. Boom becomes the engine of modern risk. And every bubble teaches a cruel lesson about trust. Still, societies rebuild and continue, wiser and more fragile. The dance of boom and bust is woven into money's fabric. We remain both creators and victims of our own currency. The modern world uses money that is no longer tied to metal. Fiat currency lives on collective acceptance. The state says, "This is money." We all agree to obey. That agreement is fragile and powerful at once. Central banks steer this belief with interest rates and reports. They whisper to markets, and people listen. Confidence fuels credit, doubt drains it. A rumor can deflate markets overnight. Governments now manage trust like an economy. Monetary policy became the art of persuasion. Money became a political instrument of modern states. Fiscal choices and central bank moves shape daily life, and the poorest often pay the largest price for monetary mistakes. The invisible hands are guided by visible institutions. Today's money is social architecture. Fragile, managed, indispensable. In recent years, new forms of money have arrived. Digital ledgers promise transparency and speed. Cryptocurrencies offered a vision, trust without authority. They challenged the old monopolies of issuance. But technology alone can't escape politics. Regulators responded, markets reacted. Stablecoins tried to marry tech with trust. Payment networks raced to be faster, cheaper, global. Yet the core question remained unchanged. Who controls belief? Software can move value, but humans assign meaning. The future of money is still a contest. Code, law, and power. New tools shift friction, but not fundamentals. Trust still needs institutions, or better institutions. The saga of money is always half human, half machine. And technology rewrites the terms, not the story. Money began as a solution to forgetfulness. It grew into a language of power and promise. Coins sung the names of rulers, paper carried the weight of states, credit stitched strangers into thriving networks, empires rose on ledgers and mine shafts. Crashes exposed our hubris. Reform responded, habits persisted. Today, money is a mirror showing what we value. It can liberate markets or bind them to old injustices. Control over money is control over fate. To understand money is to read history's invisible hand. So watch the ledgers, not only the headlines. Seek the stories beneath the coins and notes. For in those stories lie the true engines of our world. And the saga of money is still being written.